All right. So today I'm going to talk a lot about obstacles and difficulties and trials. And I talked to Ben about this, and he asked me to speak. Man, it was maybe a week after the last time. He said, "Hey, I got a date for you. It's the 30th." And time went on, and he asked me what it was going to be about. And I said, I've just been praying. I'm going to do a spirit-led message. And so over the last 2 weeks, it's kind of changed several times. And even during the service this morning, there was some changes. And so I just felt the need to just listen to that, be still and quiet. And a couple of things that prompted this is, over the last few weeks, I have a new job and I meet a lot of new people, a lot of strangers in my life now. I'm still here mostly, but I'm working out of Port Angeles, so I'm meeting a lot of new people. And it's provided me an opportunity to tell my story, because how you end up in politics from healthcare and then from politics into timber is an interesting story, and that's just the last 3 years of my life. That's not the other 37. And so it's provided me an opportunity to share my testimony as well, which has been probably the most fulfilling. And I was in Portland this last week, and a lot of folks were talking about, that they seemed that I had this wealth of knowledge and experience. And I was pretty humbled by that statement, but I said that's only partially true. I think my life is a series of 90-degree turns, a couple 180s, and maybe a 360 or two in place, and I didn't go anywhere. And I think those moments really provided me with an opportunity to put the lessons that I've been given to practice. It often takes me a few tries. I usually know the right thing to do the first time, but I often think I know better. If anybody knows me, I'm pretty analytical, and I like to think about things pretty deeply, and that often can be a crutch, actually. And so I think you can sometimes see these changes in directions coming. They're off on the horizon. You feel life is going to take a different turn. And then other times it's like driving on 112, where you're going a little too fast and the turn is right there, and you have to hit the brakes and you hope that you've done the proper maintenance on your vehicle. I think, sliding, there's worse things than sliding into the beautiful ocean that's around us, but it's not often what God has for us. And as I was listening to the worship order, it was pretty crazy to me. So the first song we sang was In the Secret. And I think when we hit those obstacles, we often pray by ourselves at first. We don't want to ask people for help. We might be in denial about the issue that we're going up against. So we're just that morning, that Band-Aid prayer, like, God, get me through this thing. And it might be a big thing. It might be a small thing. And then oftentimes it's like the second song we sang, which is Egypt, where, our back's against the sea and we need God to do something miraculous. And usually by then, everybody knows the difficulty we're going through. We're sharing it, and we're being very loud about it. And then I think, the come thy fount, it's about God's love. And sometimes that's all we get going through those things. We don't often get something material. Usually it's something inside. And I think that song particular, it's one of the first songs that I can remember learning. And then, it was even more fitting that the last one we sang is just a simple 2-verse song. It's about exalting God. And, the definition of that was told to me in Sunday school. I didn't have time to Google it before I got up here, but I know it's like the highest form of praise, right? That's what I remember the definition being. It's probably a little more nuanced than that. But it's so fitting that you don't really say much in that song. You just repeat it over and over. And so a couple of verses that I want to lead off with that, nice little intro is, I always revert back to James. That was the message I gave last time. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. And it says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature, complete, not lacking anything." And And that's an interesting way to look at it. When difficult things are happening, James is telling us, let's be joyful. I don't think that's often our first emotion that comes when we're facing perseverance. We're not usually jumping up excitedly. And I think that it's something that we can practice and work on. The different stages of my life, I've gotten better at it, to be honest. These last couple years were pretty trying for me personally. And I think I took on most of the weight pretty well and happily. It didn't always go the way I wanted, but I learned a lot through it. The other verse I wanted to share is, where'd it go? Hold on. Was 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. And it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardship, in persecution, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And that one, Corinthians might be one of my favorite verses. I have a tattoo of 13:13 on the side of my ribs. And I also was pretty surprised that Chris shared that verse this morning. I actually have a little bit of that at the end of my word today. But I think, that one is pretty hard, delighting in our weakness. That's a strange way to put it. Being excited about not being good at something is a challenge for me. I like to learn new things and grow and take on new sports or skills or activities. And I don't often delight in that early beginner stage of struggle, right? Usually it's frustrating and, you're trying to read every book or listen to every podcast or ask everybody that has experience. We want to get out of that weak stage. But this says to delight in it. In insults, man, that's a really challenging one for me. I've learned over my life that, I can have a sharp tongue at times, and it's a challenge to not insult people back. And I've learned that often, we have to just let it be. It's not often for them, but it's for us. When people are insulting us, usually they're going through something that they might not understand. And we are a reminder of that challenge. And usually that's what makes us the target. And then the next part is the hardships and in persecution. I think these all often go hand in hand. When I'm facing a difficult time, it usually feels like I'm being persecuted by somebody or something. The world is conspiring against me to make my life difficult, is what I feel like at times. And I'm working on delighting in that. But it ends with, for when I am weak, then I am strong. And I think for us, acknowledging that weakness is pushing our reliance on God, making sure that we're praying. And that ultimately is where the strength comes from. It doesn't come from ourselves. And that's something that I've really struggled with over the course of my life. It feels really good to have the answers. It feels really good to have the skills to complete a task. It feels really good to be the light when everything is dark. But in contrast, man, is it so humbling to say that I don't have the answer. I don't know how to do that. And then be tripping in the darkness of, our journey. That humility is often the highlight of our story that we don't share. I think with our story, we share with the strangers on social media, we want to share the good things, the big things, the wins, the triumph. But really, how much more could we gain from our little community if we shared those humbling moments, the moments of loss, the moments of struggle, the moments of not knowing, the big career change that seems like it was just right a little later, the heartbreaking loss that you suffer, only to find that you gain some strength, many years later, maybe decades later. Or, everything we work for, we sacrifice to get that thing, that milestone, And then when we get to the end, and often we don't get what we wanted, but we learn so much in those sacrifices, and that's actually what we gained, is that knowledge. And so, I think we need to begin to equip ourselves with the proper tools. The answer doesn't lie in us, it lies in the Word. The skills are built in our walk, exercising the Word and the truth that we learn by reading and praying. And then the light comes when we rely on faith, hope, and love. And that's 1 Corinthians 13. And man, I was like getting chills when Chris was sharing that, because it's one of my favorite verses. When I lack understanding, I remind myself that faith is the fuel. And through that fuel, we're not meant to understand everything. We got to build ourselves up to be okay with not knowing. If it was easy to do it without faith, then there would be no sacrifice. And that's the part, for me as an eternal student, I want to learn, I want to know. But it's so challenging for me to not know. And so I have to rest on that faith. And that faith has slowly given me hope. It's taken a while. I'm not going to lie and say it came to me easy. And that hope inevitably builds up. And then when we get to that difficult moment, the hope is what gets us through it until that difficulty fades away. And it feels so hard, to think about it as just another future story at the dinner table. We don't often know how difficult it is or how funny it's going to be later, but I think most of our difficulties become something that we can share at dinner on Thanksgiving. We laugh about those difficult times, even the most difficult. There's healing in making light of it. I think God has a sense of humor, and I think He designed us to have a good laugh here and there, even when it's a serious topic. And so, I think the story we need to share that will eventually become those future conversations is that we need to love. We need to love for Jesus, that eventually it permeates our families, our neighbors. It makes us better parents, better sons and daughters, better servants, and ultimately it changes things that we once thought were unreachable. And I think I can attest to that in so many different avenues of my life. The impossible becomes something that is meaningful. And so I want to end with Matthew 10:39, and it says, "Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." And I was reading that this morning, and I was going to lead off with that. And I thought, what better way to close than, we're working so hard, we're striving for our careers, for our family, for whatever it may be. But in the end, it's the sacrifices of ourself that will make up, our Savior, our grace, and ultimately lead us to God. And so let's go forward this week. Let's find the opportunity to embrace the struggle, to grow, and from that growth to serve, and in service be thankful that God has put us all here for a purpose, for a reason, even if it's just for a moment with each other that we can share. Let's be kind, let's love each other, and let's make our community better. Thank you.